The Startup Retro is a new podcast from the team behind Overnight Success.
A weekly show where we help you level up on the Australian startup ecosystem by giving you an insider's view on Aussie startups and venture capital. I'm Will Richards.
And I'm Gemma Clancy.
At OS, we curate the most important news and announcements across the ecosystem and explain a bit of useful context behind them.
The Startup Retro podcast will follow a format familiar to our readers of the weekly newsletter, but offer an opportunity for much more discussion.
So, if you want to keep your finger on the pulse of all things happening Aussie startups and venture capital, start your week by listening to the Startup Retro. New episodes every Monday, starting the 1st of July.
The Startup Retro is brought to you by Day One, the podcast network for founders, operators, and investors.
Impact investing is all about driving additionality. Additionality means an impact that would have not otherwise happened without your money and your investments.
Welcome to FinTech Fun. FinTech Fun is a podcast where Australian fintechs come to share their stories. Hi, it's Chris Titley here, and as part of the FinTech Fun podcast series, I'm with Camille Socquet-Clerc, co-founder of Bloom Impact Investing. Camille, thank you so much for coming in and doing the first FinTech Fun podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Now let's talk Bloom. What is Bloom and what it's about?
Okay, so Bloom is a fintech company with a climate impact mission. Our goal is to make climate impact investing easy and accessible so that everyone can invest in a better future.
Fantastic. And let's talk about you going back a little bit, how you came to this initiative, this company that you're building right now, and how it all began.
Of course. So, look, I've grown up in the French Alps in France, and I've always been close to nature. I used to do a lot of ski competition. So nature and protecting the environment has always been a part of me. But I worked for 10 years in the e-commerce and digital marketing space. And at some point back in 2018, I couldn't really reconcile my personal values with what I was doing. I read the IPCC report, so one of the most reputable scientific report on climate change. And this completely changed my life. I learned back then that we had 10 years left to fix climate change until we reached a point where the world was becoming really unpleasant, and I had to shift my work towards climate impact. So I joined, long story short, I joined a clean tech accelerator called Energy Lab. And this is when I really fell in love with clean tech and the clean energy sector. I tried to invest money in clean energy and clean tech, but I wasn't rich enough. And so Bloom came from a personal frustration, but also seeing a huge opportunity to match, bridge the gap between people like myself who wanted to invest with impact and the fact that it was not accessible.
And when you decided to go full time, what was the memory about that first day of thinking, okay, where do I begin?
So it was a very gradual process. It started as a side hustle for a long time, and then I went part-time. And I think the pivot moment was when we launched our waitlist. So after seeing that, over 60 people signed up in only a couple of weeks, I thought, well, maybe this has legs. Sounds like I'm not the only one who wants to invest for climate impact. And this is when I decided to go full-time.
And the next move after that, getting those waitlist people enthused about what you're doing and the setup of the product. Talk us through that process as a founder.
Long process. Financial services is highly regulated. There's a ton you have to learn and overcome as a founder. So there was a lot of an incredible amount of networking that went into this business. Some key mentors who opened some doors, and a whole lot of hustling.
Yes. And now to the point where the product is out there, the name is out there. Firstly, lovely name, by the way. How did that come about?
Oh, thank you. So, Bloom is the idea that, nature, it's the nature way to grow. it's not indefinite. It's not forever. It blooms and then it goes back to nature. So I'm hoping bloom can symbolizes, I guess, a respectful way to grow with the environment.
Yep. And in regards to the platform and app and whatnot now, where are you at? How's the progress going?
Yeah, well, it's really exciting. We've launched 2 months ago and we already have $650,000 under management, couple of hundred of customers who gave us a 5-star rating on the app. So it's really all going well despite a challenging market environment. So we're really happy with the launch.
And the feedback that you're getting from those initial customers to build out, to iron out bugs and also to build out the product set. Can you talk about that and what you're thinking as well in terms of refining the product?
So our tech has been incredibly stable. That's all, thanks to my amazing co-founder who's a full stack software engineer and has done an amazing job. But we're getting feedback on the impact. People want to see more of their impact. So that's something we want to develop in terms of content and engagement. We talk to customers a lot and we take their feedback seriously. But what we take even more seriously is the data. So we look at their engagement in the app, and what we're seeing is people really love the impact stories we publish every week. So I think it's time for fintech companies to understand that, yes, there's the money element, but you have to dig deeper. What is it in your customer that is meaningful? And in that relationship between your customer and the product. And for us, it's the link between money and impact. So we want to dig a little bit further there and offer an even more interactive experience where people could even perhaps be, included in the process of investing and selecting investments. So that's on our roadmap. And
on the investment side, where can people invest in? What are they investing in and how much can they start with? Yeah, of course. So Bloom starts at $500. And when you invest with Bloom, in one simple trade, you invest in a diversified growth fund that invests in over 50 different climate solutions and 85 different investments across 5 asset classes. That's a whole lot of jargon to say that you invest in different things like listed companies, but also clean energy projects like solar farms or recycling facilities. And that's what's new. These investments were used to be only accessible to wealthy, sophisticated investors. Right. Okay. And then in the stories behind that and the impact that's making, you mentioned you do a weekly impact post, and that's what customers want more of. How are you doing that? How are you really trying to show the impact that the money's where it's going towards, not just a return? Yeah, that's right. So unfortunately, there's no one silver bullet metric, although we are all striving towards decarbonizing the industry and the economy. But I think actually we have to do a lot of storytelling and education. So what we do at Bloom is we explain what the companies we invest in do, and we translate this into impact. So it could be like, for example, a waste management company, and we explain in practical terms how much waste they've been able to divert from landfill and how much emissions does that represent. So there's a whole lot of storytelling and explanation that have to, be packed within our impact updates. And with the portfolio approach that you're taking with that investment, there's going to be some outstanding performers, some not so good, and some that are not so good, maybe even go to zero. How do you explain that to the investor base that not all of them are going to work and not all of them are going to succeed, and some might not be the desired outcome? Of course, yeah. So at Bloom, we invest for retail investors. So taking into consideration the risk and liquidity is super important. So what we tell our customers is that we invest for the long term. We're not a trading app. We're not in the business of making a quick return and going away. That's not how impact investing works. But also it's all about diversification. We believe that the clean energy transition is happening, whether you like it or not. So that's our investment thesis. And we know that within the 95 plus investments that we have,
overall, it's like tracking an index. Overall, we know that these companies will win. So some can go down, some can go up, but we apply a sound asset allocation strategy and also a rules-based allocations. We don't try to pick winners. We actually spread our investment across lots of different themes, lots of different companies, lots of different geographies, and this is ultimately driving a good outcome for our investors.
And if one of those investments doubles, triples, quadruples, it may be a bigger weighting in the overall fund. What happens in that instance? Do you have to sort of trim it back to a risk management level?
Look, that's the tough job that we give to our investment manager, Dan East. So yeah, our portfolio is rebalanced on a quarterly basis, and we manage risk on a daily basis.
And for people to get their money out, for instance, for whatever reason they want to, is it quite easy to do?
5 business days.
5 business days.
In and out of the fund in 5 business days. That's our promise.
Right. And in terms of the investment offering moving forward, have you thought to get into other assets that people might pitch to you and say this is an investment opportunity? How are you going to think about that in the future?
Absolutely. So look, impact investing is all about driving additionality. Additionality means an impact that would have not otherwise happened without your money and your investments. And as such, I am incredibly passionate and interested in going more into VC, so helping early stage companies get off the ground, but also even more around infrastructure, so clean energy projects. That's on our radar, but we need more scale. We need more funds under management to get there. So it will be a little while away, but definitely on the map.
And in the next 12 months, looking forward in terms of Bloom, that's obviously on the roadmap, but what else is on the roadmap?
We are raising money at the moment, so I'm hoping to grow the team, really push forward with our product and growth roadmap, and support our fund operations. So we want to develop the product further. We want to look at expansion, not only in other financial services segments, but also overseas. So a ton to do. We have big dreams. We need to move billions away from fossil fuels into impactful clean tech investments. So yeah, there's not a minute to waste.
And on that point about a startup founder, I mean, the challenges that you face every day, is there one out there that sort of, well, there's probably many challenges, but there's one out there that stands out? You think, okay, I actually didn't expect this as a startup founder?
No, because I worked for a clean tech startup accelerator before, I knew what I was getting into. I guess the number one challenge is keeping this unwavering faith, and meaning you work hard no matter how you feel. You put in the work consistently, and that's all that matters. So what I didn't expect is how important it is to manage your energy, and that's something I'm really working on at the moment.
And on the flip side, some advice to other startup founders out there that may have just started and you're a little bit of a step ahead. What's some advice that you can give them?
My second advice is, I guess after the unwavering faith, is laser focus. It's so easy to get distracted. Pick advice carefully, and how to pick advice carefully. Get advice from people who've been there, done that. It's often worth a lot more than people who, I guess, watch from the sidelines. The best advice I've ever had, and the most useful help I've been given, is always from other founders.
So the Australian ecosystem, we're here to help in terms of content and engaging content, and that's what Sub 11 does in trying to make some networks and connections. Is there people out there in Australia that you'd like to meet from a company point of view, from a partnership point of view, from an equity point of view? Is there someone out there in particular that you'd like to meet, or a group of people?
Oh, that's an excellent question. Any founder who has been successful in scaling their fintech company, I would love to meet and discuss how they've done that. I think one of the key challenges for fintech founders is the cost per acquisition for customers. It has gone up terribly in the last few years. We're all competing for somewhat the same customers. And Google, Facebook, all these advertising platforms have driven, competition up, and I think we're all losing in that game. So I think we need to get smarter and collaborate, do some partnership affiliate programs to ultimately get to a better outcome.
And on that note, in regards to partnerships and other big financial institutions, is there much competition in what you're doing? Are you seeing it? Do you want more competition?
There are definitely some investing platforms focusing on impactful outcomes. In Europe, there's one startup that we follow closely called Cooler Future in Germany that does something similar to Bloom. But in Australia, I think we are the first to market.
Right, excellent, fantastic. And the push for growth in terms of your team, what are you looking for in terms of building out your team and the resources that are needed?
So we're going to be on the lookout for someone who can further develop our self-managed super fund acquisition strategy and really break into the wealth management listings and services. So someone with experience in that space. And we will be hiring more marketing and growth professionals because that's really what Bloom needs to crack next, scaling in Australia.
Excellent. Camille, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast. I hope you enjoyed the first episode of FinTech Fun. It's a work in progress, but we'll see how it goes. I really want to congratulate you on what you've achieved at Bloom thus far and look forward to catching up.
Thank you so much. My pleasure.
For more information on Sub 11, jump onto our LinkedIn or email me, chris@sub11.com.au. Thanks for listening.
The Startup Retro is a new podcast from the team behind Overnight Success.
A weekly show where we help you level up on the Australian startup ecosystem by giving you an insider's view on Aussie startups and venture capital. I'm Will Richards.
And I'm Gemma Clancy.
At OS, we curate the most important news and announcements across the ecosystem and explain a bit of useful context behind them.
The Startup Retro podcast will follow a format familiar to our readers of the weekly newsletter, but offer an opportunity for much more discussion.
So, if you want to keep your finger on the pulse of all things happening Aussie startups and venture capital, start your week by listening to the Startup Retro. New episodes every Monday, starting the 1st of July.
The Startup Retro is brought to you by Day One, the podcast network for founders, operators, and investors.